It's Monday, April 27th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Officials at the dos-Santos Public Health Laboratory are expected to finish testing staff members at the National Assistance Board for COVID-19 today. Word of this from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, who also disclosed that over 150 NAB employees have been tested so far after a member of the administrative staff stationed at the Country Road St. Michael headquarters tested positive for the virus on April 14. Since then, 4 others, also from the same office, have tested positive and are now in isolation, which resulted in government testing all employees at headquarters as well as other locations. Meanwhile, 35 people who worked in the administrative division at the Country Road St. Michael location, members of their households, and persons identified as close contacts are also now under quarantine. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Barbados remains at 79. Barbados and the rest of the region are being told that surveillance remains critical as they are still in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. The advice is coming from Ian Hambleton, Professor of Biostatistics at the George Allen Chronic Disease Research Center at the University of the West Indies Gavel campus. Speaking during a forum entitled UWI on the Frontline, Combating COVID-19 Through Data, the professor said while some regional countries have managed impressive containment measures so far, daily monitoring of new cases and deaths can't guide national responses to the pandemic.
That it's still very early days for the Caribbean. The outbreak picture is going to change daily, so daily monitoring of new cases and new deaths can guide changes to national responses, and they can contribute in the future to discussions of when governments might consider how to start easing the controls that they currently have in place.
Deputy Dean of Research at the George Allen Chronic Disease Research Center, Dr. Madhuvanti Murphy, also addressed the forum and commended the early intervention of Caribbean countries to contain the spread of COVID-19.
I think most Caribbean countries took strict suppression measures early on, and as I mentioned when I presented, most of them did so before they even had their first case. I think a lot of people focus on the curfew type and lockdown type measures, and they figure that that's the one way to do things. And clearly things like closing borders is very important in some cases. But keeping in mind that those types of NPIs only slow the spread. And yes, we want to slow and contain the spread. So I would say that we didn't wait too long, even though it may seem that some countries took a few days longer than others to do that. I think we were actually ahead of the game in making those decisions fairly early, seeing what was happening in other places. The key now is to see how it's contained and what decisions we make from there, because clearly these suppression measures can't go on forever.
Dr. Murphy also stressed the need for surveillance, saying it would guide the countries in determining their next steps.
That this is not a time to be worried about which country is in a better position than others, but really focusing on surveillance in terms of using that to inform continued decision making that can impact those trajectories. So if the trajectories are going up a bit, those can change if we put in the relevant strategies and put them in early on. As we can see, most of the Caribbean countries began implementing their non-pharmaceutical interventions before their first case was reported, which is a good thing. So in a sense, we've had a bit of a head start on containment.
In other news this Monday, Barbados recorded its 11th murder for the year on Sunday. 20-year-old Jeremiah Jamila Granum of Woodland St. George died following a shooting incident at Fifth Avenue, New Orleans, St. Michael. Police spokesman, Acting Inspector Rodney Innes, reported that Granum died at the scene.
What was further reported to us is that there was an altercation between the said male and a number of men. It was reported to have started somewhere around Hickson Gap, and he ran away, the deceased ran away, being chased by a number of masked men who were firing shots at him. The chase ended up with him falling on Fifth Avenue, where we see him lying there.
There's regional and international news after this short break. Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from our regional neighbors, the Trinidad and Tobago government has extended the public health regulations, including the stay-at-home policy, to May 10. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said his administration was also looking at the possibility of opening up the borders on May 15 as efforts continue to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
We will keep the borders closed until at least the 15th of May. We will continue to stay at home until at least the 10th of May, because if by the 10th of May we would have seen enough of a downward movement of the curve, we could make that call before the 15th of May.
More time staying at home. The announcement coming from Prime Minister Rowley Saturday, as the government will use that extra time to stick by its mantra of letting science make the call on when to ease the restrictions.
To determine scientifically what presence or level of presence of the virus exists in the general population. That then will allow us to make confident opening up decisions. So in short, we need a few more days of holding the fort.
Dr. Rowley says the country has been doing well, but this is no time to relax. The Chief Medical Officer says TNT should start doing its own COVID-19 testing from Monday. That would mean more people being tested.
And finally, inmates at a prison in Argentina staged a demonstration demanding more protection from the spread of COVID-19 after a guard tested positive for the virus. More in this report from Al Jazeera.
The Devoto prison in the city of Buenos Aires taken over inmates. Hundreds of them on the rooftop of the only prison in the city. We need help. We don't want to die here, they said. We're not animals. One guard tested positive in the past week, and prisoners say they fear for their lives. Water and electricity has been cut off. The prisoners say there are many who have chronic diseases and need to be put under house arrest.
Prisons in Argentina already have a history of overcrowding and lack of sanitations. In this one, we've been seeing the prisoners throwing rocks and the police responding using rubber bullets. We also heard several explosions inside. Unrest has been on the rise in prisons in these countries as inmates are fearful of the spread of COVID-19.
The inmates' relatives came to show their support. They want their loved ones released. They tried to cross the cordoned area. The police did not allow them.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.